Good morning. Thank you for being here. My name is Jennifer Cascio, C-A-S-C-I-O, and I'm an attorney at Salvi, Schostok, and Pritchard. Together with my co-counsel, Pat Salvi Jr. and Parker Steiner, we represent over 50 Northwestern athletes across sports and genders. You've previously heard stories from brave athletes coming out and talking about the sexualized and ritualized hazing that has occurred at Northwestern over the course of many years. Today, our focus is on a different part of the story. You will hear from two former football players, and they are going to be discussing the systemic racism that occurred in the athletic department at Northwestern. You'll hear from Noah Herron and Rico Lamite.
Absolutely. Spell your name.
Noah Herron, last name's Herron. Good morning. My name is Noah Herron. I played football at Northwestern from 2000 to 2004. I was a team captain. I was the team's co-MVP, all Big Ten Conference, and was drafted in the 2005 NFL Draft, where I played for 5 years. I stand here not only as a victim of impact bias and racism at Northwestern University by coaches, trainers, staff, but also as an advocate on behalf of my former teammates, fellow Northwestern athletes, and as a parent, demanding that the toxic culture of racism, sexualized hazing that Northwestern promoted and tolerated for numerous decades ends today. I personally experienced impact bias and racism. I witnessed fellow teammates experience the same. Northwestern not only treated players of color differently than our white teammates, but they tried to conform us in our appearance to resemble our white teammates, or what Northwestern would consider the Wildcat way. Northwestern recruited me as a football player, but refused to see me and accept me as a man, a black man who was and is proud of my race and culture. All individuals, regardless of race, should be proud of who they are, their race, their appearance, and should be able to celebrate those very important things. Instead of not just appreciating my football abilities and also who I was as an individual, Northwestern demanded that me and fellow teammates of color conform to this Wildcat way, meaning a white appearance. As a young black man, I was proud of my braided hair. Many of my fellow black teammates, proud of their race and culture, expressed themselves through their hair. Our hair did not affect our performance on the field, preclude the protections of our helmets, or interfere in games or practices. Despite our white teammates being able to have long hair or style it in a variety of ways, me and fellow black teammates were told that we had to either cut or restyle our hair to resemble this Wildcat way. White teammates were permitted to have their hair long, but players of colors with braids or longer were told they have to cut it. Me and fellow black teammates were punished for our appearance and personalities, threatened with playing time, starting positions, scholarships, or even the ability to transfer. At the Alamo Bowl in 2005, two of my black teammates were physically punished in such a severe manner that it was referred to as the Christmas Massacre. The head coach told two white position coaches that if these two black players were able to walk off the field after their punishment, that they themselves would be fired. The physical punishment was so severe that one of my brothers, a grown man, defecated himself and needed to be carried off the field. That was the culture. And sadly, I've talked to more recent players, individuals who played nearly 2 decades after me, and the toxic culture has not changed. A culture of threats, abuse, coercion for forced compliance into the Wildcat way. I'm proud to be a black man, proud to be a former colleague and professional football player. I have tremendous love and respect for all my brothers that I've played with. I stand here as a man, a black man, condemning the actions of Northwestern University, their coaches, trainers, and staff who enabled and tolerated a racist culture. I demand that Northwestern University be held accountable for decades of abuse of young individuals and demand that they and other institutions change the toxic cultures that have been enabled for way too long. Racism at Northwestern must end. Racism in all sports must end. Those that have enabled or participated in this conduct need to be held accountable.
Morning. My name is Rico Lamite. I played at Northwestern University. L-A-M as in Mary, I-T-T-E. Cool.
I'm sorry, your first name again?
Rico, R-I-C-O.
R-I-C-O.
Correct. I played football at Northwestern University as Rico Tarver from 2001 to 2005. I was a team captain in 2005 and a multi-year academic Big Ten honoree. I want to start things off by saying I love Northwestern University. I love my NU Wildcat family, all my brothers I went to battle with on the field for years on end, but also the ones who came after. They know I still bleed purple to this day. But I'm here today as a black man, a black husband, a black father, and a former black athlete. For me, this is about accountability. I, like too many young black high school, collegiate, and professional athletes, experienced racism from my coaches and the program. I, like too many young black high school, collegiate, and professional athletes, experienced racism from my coaches and the program. For far too long, and even today, black athletes have been encouraged to conform to white culture. Whether it's a high school football team, women's college basketball, or even professional sports, black culture is sadly and wrongly perceived as threatening, scary, and looked down upon, which isn't too surprising when you look at the underlying structure of these institutions. Most professional sports teams are white-owned. Most college and university presidents, trustees, regents, and athletic directors are white. At Northwestern, I was never seen as a black man first, an athlete second. From the moment I stepped foot on campus as an incoming freshman, that was made apparent when a black man, a teammate and brother, Rashidi Wheeler, died a few feet away from me during a conditioning drill. The way the whole incident was mishandled and the team was never given closure or space to properly heal, that set the tone for what I would experience over the next 4.5 years of my life. I was threatened and forced to conform to the Wildcat way, a toxic environment that had no room or tolerance for me as a black man, and the culture I was and am proud of. Me and my fellow teammates of color were teased, humiliated, threatened, hazed, and abused because we resisted conforming to that Wildcat way, which is coded white culture. Coaches, trainers, and staff told us that we needed to change the way we dressed, acted, styled our hair. As a freshman, I was told I'd never see any playing time because unless I cut my hair. And if I did not cut it myself, the coaches would instruct upperclassmen to hold me down and shave it at or before Camp Kenosha. I ended up cutting it myself to avoid humiliation and embarrassment, but witnessed several teammates, some with years of dreadlocks and cornrows, stripped of their identities from their peers, in front of their peers. If we were all held to the same standard, maybe it would not have stung so much. But fellow white teammates were allowed to grow their hair long, hanging out of their helmets. But each time one of us did, Northwestern coaches would remind us to stay in our place. One position coach said that if I ever wanted to play, I'd need my hair tightly braided to never show out of my helmet, because that was the Wildcat way. See, I'm from a place called Fluvanna County, Virginia. It's the country. being from the South, I was no stranger to racism. But that's why I left the South. That's why I came to Chicago, because I thought it was going to be different. I never imagined I'd be subjected to insensitive, racially undertoned activities like the watermelon eating contest. It was celebrated at the end of Camp Kenosha each year. Coaches created a watermelon eating challenge, something they deemed as a team bonding event. Each possession group picked a participant to represent them in the competition. Of course, there was jokes tossed back and forth about how racist that it was. If your group didn't pick a black player to participate, losing was assumed and vice versa. After playing TCU my junior year, we had an Asian kicker that had a rough game, missed a few field goals, and head coach said to him, "We have a chink in our armor." We thought it was funny at the time because we didn't know any better. But me and my teammates of color were constantly subjected to racial abuse. Northwestern did not see me or my teammates as humans, students, or student athletes. We were not celebrated or appreciated for our color or culture. We were forced and threatened to conform to the Wildcat way. For me, today, this is about accountability. Northwestern placed profits over people and used us for our athletic talents. All athletes, whether at Northwestern or any other college, university, or in professional sports, should always feel comfortable, safe, and confident in their own skin, regardless of color. When my daughter, who's 3 years old now, gets old enough to play organized sports, and if she chooses that's the path that she wants to take, I want her to be celebrated at every level for who she is. Color and culture should be accepted and celebrated. Northwestern created, enabled, and tolerated a toxic culture of sexualized hazing and racial discrimination. Northwestern's culture must be exposed, they must be held accountable, and the culture must change. Thank you.
So what I want to provide everybody, because I'm sure many of you are curious, is just kind of a procedural update. What I can tell you is that over 20 lawsuits have been filed. There are many, many more claimants who do not have cases on file. I can tell you that our firms represent over 50 former athletes from Northwestern, most of which are football. And then there are certainly other firms that represent additional football players. And really, if you do the math, just our firm alone, and you think over the last 20 to 25 years, each year would have on average 20 to 25 football players, you're talking about 10, 15, maybe approaching 20% of the players have now come forward and hired lawyers. And we know from conversations that there are many more considering, but for reasons that are quite obvious, it's challenging. And we applaud the bravery of Noah, Rico, and everybody else standing behind us for coming public and hopefully offering that support for anybody who has those concerns and also want to come forward and ensure that we affect change. Now, procedurally, many of these players played many years ago, and there's a thing in the law called the statute of limitations. Now, we have certain factual and legal arguments that we believe can and will be successful as it relates to the statute of limitations. But even for players that played years ago, even if they aren't successful in court as it relates to the statute of limitations, there are plenty of players that suffered this abuse more recently that have no statute of limitations problems. Their cases will not be time barred under any circumstances. And so what you see behind us are folks that will stand as witnesses, because what has to happen here in terms of accountability is cultural change and restitution for what's happened in the past. And that's what we're seeking. And so significant discovery has not commenced yet, so there's not much more factually to share with you as it relates to the lawsuits. We're still in what we call the pleadings stages of these lawsuits, so not yet really to the substance. But again, we look forward to bringing this evidence and much more evidence to the forefront to show that Northwestern as an institution failed, and as a deterrent both to Northwestern and others, we will in full force be prosecuting these lawsuits. Sure, I'm sorry I didn't do that at the beginning. Patrick Salvi Jr., the first name common spelling, Salvi, S-A-L-V, as in Victor, I.
So are you saying for some of your clients, the statute of limitations may be a challenge for you?
I think there's no question that there are likely to be statute of limitations defenses for cases that emanate from the 90s or the early 2000s. So that's a legal reality. You see that in all abuse cases, even whether it's clergy or University of Michigan or other institutions where there are claims that are decades old. That's always a reality that we as the lawyers must face. But there are plenty of claims that have absolutely no statute of limitations issues that pose significant liability risks to Northwestern, particularly with when you have witnesses like these folks who are willing to come forward and show a jury that this is a pattern that's occurred for many, many years, which requires punishment and deterrence through punitive damages.
May I ask Rico or Noah? I know that a lot of players have come forward already. What made you decide I need to speak out now? One of you could come forward.
Oh, it's fine. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I have no problem answering that. My 40th birthday was recently. I was actually out in Hawaii, and I'm on vacation, unplugged from absolutely everything, and I came back, and the whole scandal was going down. And I saw online, on social media, one of my teammates was being attacked vehemently, and my wife is in the mental health field, right? And she wrote a book on, black trauma, and she's a trauma-informed specialist. And to see one of my teammates of color being attacked by our white brothers in public, my heart was broken. And the fact that I was there as a senior, just trying to make my way to the next level, and I didn't speak up then, as a man, 20 years later, it's not going to happen again.
So this is something that's been on your mind for decades.
Yes.
And you've been wanting to talk about it. And
Yes.
you feel the strength. Because
Yes.
You've seen your fellow teammates come forward.
Yeah, we lived it. Without going too deep into everybody else's story, because I can't speak for everybody else, right? A lot of us have blacked out things. A lot of us just tried to move forward. At the time, we want to make it to the NFL. You're a captain on the team. You got tunnel vision. Stuff goes on. You're just oh, that's a distraction. You're trained to be that's a distraction. That's a distraction. Stay the path. And then you see that it's affected people for years on end. That affects you, especially when you have kids. I don't want my kids to ever have to deal with that.
Rico, do you believe that Coach Fitzgerald did not know?
I don't know. I can't speak for him.
Do you and Noah both have pending lawsuits right now?
No, they don't. They're not amongst the plaintiffs that have filed suit as of right now. And there's other kind of, nitty-gritty reasoning and answers to that I can't really share because it's pending litigation. But your direct answer is no.
Okay. So you want to share your story, but you do not have lawsuits pending?
Not lawsuits pending right now. Doesn't mean there may not be in the future, but not right now. That's correct. Yeah.
Pat, that's right. How many total lawsuits have you filed?
We've filed 7.
7.
Right, and in total, amongst all the firms, it's in the low 20s. I apologize for not having the precise number for you, but it's 20 or more, in the low 20s. Yeah.
And that's not uncommon for cases like this. If you look at University of Michigan with Anderson, Larry Nasser with Michigan State, maybe 10% of the claimants actually file lawsuits. And it puts it on the university, like Pat shared as far as the statute of limitations. These brave men are coming forward, sharing their stories or supporting their teammates. And we represent, like Pat shared and Jen shared, more than 50 brave individuals that want to hold the university accountable. That doesn't require every single one of them to file a lawsuit, but for those that have, is the university, if they even felt that they have a statute of limitations argument to be made, are they going to try to dismiss the cases of brave men and women that are coming forward, acknowledging and demanding accountability? Is Northwestern really going to try to dismiss those individuals' lawsuits based on statute of limitations, especially when Northwestern clearly acknowledged by the termination of Fitzgerald that there has been a problem in their program?
So your firm alone, 7 lawsuits, but that doesn't mean 7 ex-players, right?
No,
That's
It does
seven
mean
lawsuits.
ex-players? Okay.
So one thing that it said in the news release too is that this news conference is coming a day before Northwestern plays tomorrow at Wrigley Field. Can you talk about the timing of this news conference with that happening tomorrow?
So often it's easy for alumni, coaches, presidents, current students to overlook something like this, a toxic culture, something bad that's happened because there's a football game on Saturday. And let's celebrate, let's tailgate, let's have fun. And unfortunately, the wrongdoings at Northwestern sadly have been overlooked due to the start of the football season. These individuals gave blood, sweat, and tears for that university, for their program, produced tremendous revenues for the university. And we demand that this story is not silenced by football season or time. And that's why these brave individuals are coming forward, and they'll continue to come forward until Northwestern is held accountable.
Your name is spelled?
Parker, and my last name is Stinar.
Would either yourself or Rico or Noah be able to speak to what justice or accountability would look like for you?
Justice and accountability, not happening. The culture being eradicated from college sports. That's what justice and accountability is for me. I don't want this to happen to anybody else. I'll say it now. I'll say it a million times. I love Northwestern. I love my brothers that I play with. I love the school. But we went through a lot of crap. You know, trying to discuss. We went through a lot of stuff, and we shouldn't have had to. It should have been about school. It should have been about preparing for the next level, and it wasn't. And unfortunately, a lot of us had a lot of blowback from what happened. And you know what? We're taught as life. It doesn't have to be that way. And that's what I want to get out of it, is accountability, so I can actually, in good faith, recommend that the next brother comes to Northwestern and is comfortable playing at Northwestern and is proud of what happened there. That's what I want.
Legally,
As far as who directed these behaviors or this culture, who would you say that was? Was it the head coach at the time? Was it somebody else who sort of directed those things that you described?
he's not going to comment on that now. But to add on to answer the question as far as accountability, we've filed now, like Pat shared, 7 civil lawsuits. And that's what we are. We're civil litigators. What accountability looks like under the law will include institutional changes at Northwestern to protect what Rico just shared, future athletes, students who have been targeted based on race. Also, if you look at institutional abuse cases, there's a monetary resolution that also goes to accountability for an institution. USC paid over $1 billion for victims of abuse. Penn State with Jerry Sandusky paid tens of millions of dollars to victims of abuse. Michigan State for Larry Nasser paid $500 million. And University of Michigan with Dr. Anderson paid $490 million. Northwestern is going to be held accountable on every aspect that we're able to do under our justice system.
Just for clarification, was the punishment given to Mr. Green's teammates the gallon goal related to their hairstyle?
I can go ahead. Yes, no, I know. I can answer. Who asked that question?
Shelter.
Oh, thank you. No. Rather, there was, as I understand it, discriminate treatment between black and white players, where these two players were, as I understand it, inordinately punished as it related to some timing issue that was it was unclear to many of the athletes to many of the football players when they had to be at a particular place, and even though black and white players both had that confusion, there were a small group of black players that ultimately were severely punished. You heard the extent of it. So I think that's about as much as I can share on that, because again, now we're getting into some details that are part of pending litigation.
Rico, how do you pronounce your last name again?
Lamit.
Meet? Thank you.
Any other questions?
All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.